welcome to the weekly discussion of how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. This is the Fill in the Blank podcast. I'm Ross Strader, and I'm joined by my co-host Keith Abels. And we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the show. We'd love for you to join the conversation. You can follow us on Twitter at AskFITB, or you can email us at fitbpodcast@gmail.com, or on the Twitter, if you've got something to say and want us to know about it, hashtag AskFITB, and we'll find it as part of the conversation. Keith, we have talked several weeks about how folks can join this journey with us, how they can support the Fill in the Blank podcast by going to patreon.com. And you've been talking to us about a $1 challenge. And so first tell folks about Patreon, how they can support us, and then what's the $1 challenge about?
Well, Patreon allows our listeners to support our show completely on their terms. And so that means you can contribute any amount that you want, and you get to decide how much our show is worth to you. So you get to decide the value. To do that, you go to patreon.com/FITB and show your support. The $1 challenge is pretty simple. Contribute just $1 a month to the Fill in the Blank podcast through the Patreon site at patreon.com/FITB, and that allows us to keep our show going. It pays for a little bit of the overhead that we have in producing the show, and as everybody knows, the $1 challenge is helping us upgrade our equipment. So if you're a fan of the show, we certainly appreciate you listening. If you're willing and able to support us by joining in on the $1 challenge, you can do that at patreon.com/FITB.
Yeah, and we hope you do. So we would love for you to be a part of the support of this program. All right, Keith, so tonight, well, I say tonight, could be any time you're listening to this, but we're actually recording this at night. We are going to skip a follow-up, and we're going straight to the rumors about the upcoming Apple event. And so we just sort of wanted to talk through what the rumors are about the next Apple event and what could be, what they could showcase, and see what our thoughts are about that. So the March event coming up is going to be the Steve Jobs Theater at Apple.
Well, hang on. The March event is still a rumor in and of itself. So none of this has been confirmed yet.
Oh, that's right. But they've had one over the last, 6-7 years. It's supposed to fall. It would fall this year if they were going to do one, right?
Yeah, so they kind of are off and on in March. So they had one in 2015, which was the first one they did for a few years. The couple of years before then, they didn't do one. Mm-hmm. And then they did. So that was 2015, I believe, was the first Apple Watch.
Okay.
And then they did the MacBook. All right, so 2015, they did the Apple Watch and MacBook. So those are two pretty groundbreaking devices. 2016, we got the iPhone SE and the first iPad Pro. And then last year, we didn't have anything. But
right.
We think, at least the rumor on the street is that there's enough for them to coordinate one of these events. But, we'll see. So nothing has been announced formally yet. But it seems like they've got enough on their plate here that one is highly likely. There's enough swirling around the rumor mill that makes this one somewhat credible.
And it wouldn't be it wouldn't be out of character that even though it's already March, they could still announce a March event and get one pulled off by the end of March.
Oh, totally. So now that they have their own theater, right, the Steve Jobs Theater at Apple Park, they don't have to rent one from somewhere in San Francisco or San Jose or any of the places they normally do those. They've got their own arena there, their own theater. So that means they don't really have to book things terribly far in advance. They completely control that. So they could drop a notice out there, a week and a half ahead of time and completely do it. So there's not a lot of lead time. And even when they did have these events in San Francisco or San Jose or somewhere else at a larger venue, they still didn't give people much time, maybe a couple of weeks at the most, worth a heads up. And hopefully they had time to get a halfway decent price on a plane ticket and get there for those that had to fly in for it. But, we'll see. They could certainly do it last minute.
Well, and when Apple announces an event, people drop what they're doing and they show up because there's always the anticipation of, this could be the next big thing, although we haven't had the one more thing in a long time. All right. Well, so the rumor is about there is very possibly going to be a March event. And then, and so if there is, and they've, there's all these things sort of been going on, lots of rumors about patents being filed, and there are some things in the product line that are due a refresh. And so if you think about a March event, what possibly could be there? What are the things people have anticipation about?
Well, there's a lot actually, and so what we're going to do is run down the list provided at imore.com, which is a great site to go follow a bunch of Apple news. And so I've got an article, I'll put this in the show notes, the Apple March 2018 event rumors. So the first one on the list here from iMore is, will there be a new iPhone SE2? Now, the SE is the smaller device that came out a couple of years ago. And if you remember, this is the form factor of the iPhone 5S. So it's that 4-inch screen that has the kind of blocky, one of my favorite iPhone designs, actually, the blocky type of design. It's more square, right? It doesn't have the rounded edges, a 4-inch screen. And they took that design and put the guts of the iPhone 6S into it. And so they got an A9 processor in that. They got a 12 megapixel camera, 4K video, live photos, things like that. It's an awesome phone in a small form factor. And that's been out there for a couple of years. It's about due for a redesign, or actually an upgrade, I should say, if they're going to keep that same form factor. So the question is, do they keep that same form factor that they've been building for years now and upgrade the internals? Or do they just roll over to the new design language that you're starting to see in the newer iPhones? Or do they not do one of these at all? And of course, the purpose of this device is to get customers that are at a lower price point. So for example, you can buy one of these things just outright for $349. And I think that is an excellent value. So that's a really good smartphone. You're not giving up a bunch of, features or functionality on this device, and you're getting it for a great price. So for people that are on a budget, or that maybe just aren't interested in $1,000 iPhone, which is a lot of people, or even an $800 phone, a $349 iPhone is a very compelling offer. So to give that a refresh, whether it's in the same case or a new design, I think it's totally plausible. The question is, does it make sense for Apple? And who knows? We'll have to see.
Well, and there's a lot of people, they like the 4-inch screen. It's the best one to go in your pocket. I mean, so if you carry a purse, something like that, it doesn't. The size of the iPhone doesn't matter as much. But if it's something you carry around in your pocket, that is the perfect size phone to go in your pocket. I have lamented lots of times that I moved out of that size into the bigger size.
Yeah, me too. But the thing that gets me though is, when you upgrade to a newer phone, I don't get one every year. I get one every couple of years, or sometimes I've gotten one every year. But I don't do it every year.
Right.
But the camera upgrades,
yeah, that's
are
true.
so good, and that may not be enough for some people to upgrade their phones, and that's perfectly the perfectly good reason, if that's not a big deal to you. But I'll tell you, over the last maybe year or so, I've been super into using my iPhone for creative photography. I just have a lot of fun just taking interesting photos, and as a matter of fact, my Instagram is nothing but those. I don't have pictures of my kids or family or my lunch, or any of that stuff
Right.
on my Instagram. I have, just a bunch of what I think are interesting photos that, that I, just come across as I'm walking through different places, or, just around my house or whatever. I just try to take some interesting photos and, and post them on there. And I've really enjoyed that. And my iPhone, I have a 7 Plus. I did not upgrade to the 10. Or even the 8. I have an 8 Plus as a work phone. But the camera on the 7 Plus and the 8 Plus is just remarkable. And it is a very big difference. It allows me to do some things that I couldn't do on one of these other phones. And so for me, that is enough to upgrade. And then if you're also interested, go check out my Instagram. I'm keith.abels on Instagram. I don't think you follow me on it. Do you have an Instagram account, Ross?
I do, but I don't. I have like 8 people I follow, mostly family. But I'm going to go follow your account. I'll tell you this: the portrait mode in the iPhone S Plus, 7S, or the 7
7
Plus,
Plus.
which is what I have, and that portrait mode is a game changer.
It is.
But and I will say, if the SE, if they had a 4-inch with a great camera and portrait mode, I'd be interested in it. But I would be hard pressed to go backwards from that level camera with the software and that functionality. But that portrait mode is unbelievable.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, so SE's due for a refresh. There's rumors about the red product on the iPhone 10 or iPhone X, depending on how you say it. But what do you think about the whole product red thing?
I think the product red campaign is a very good campaign in general. There's a lot of brands that support that, and what they do, the money that they raise, I think is awesome. That being said, it doesn't necessarily convince me to buy one product over another. And to be honest, I don't really like the color red, but that's that's a personal thing. Lots of people do. And, so last year in March of 2017, Apple announced, they didn't have an event, but they did launch the red iPhone 7 Plus.
Yes.
And was it also a 7 or was it just a 7 Plus? I don't know. So here's the thing with doing that. So this was well after, if the original iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, if those were released in whatever it was, September, October the previous year, this would be 6 or 7 months down the road that they introduce a new color. And so you would think, well, why would they do that? And I think the answer is pretty simple. Number one, the hardcore fans are going to buy the new model right off the bat, right? And then what happens is you see this really big spike in sales, and it doesn't matter which phone it is. You could take a Galaxy device. Samsung just announced the Galaxy S9, which is probably going to be awesome. I've looked at some of the reviews online and watched some videos, and that thing looks really awesome. So whether it's a Galaxy, whether it's the iPhone, the hardcore fans are going to buy it, within the first, day, week, month, whatever, their time and budget allows. But they're going to find a way to get one of those pretty early. And then after that, you see sales really normalize at a much lower level. So you've got the big spike, and then you've got just kind of steady sales at a much lower level from there, right? That's kind of the cycle for one of these types of devices. So halfway through that cycle, right? So 6 months later, if you're on an annual cycle, a 1-year upgrade cycle, or if you're going to put these things out once a year, then halfway through, it's a great way to generate some excitement and some buzz from maybe the people that didn't upgrade, or didn't get the new device when it came out. But something like this is enough of a little refresh or bump or change or something like that to get them to go for it. So not only does it introduce a new color, which is always nice, but it creates some excitement halfway through your product cycle that otherwise would not have been there.
Yeah.
It basically creates another secondary spike in sales, although not quite as big as the first one. It's still a nice little bump in sales halfway through that sales cycle. And, so number one, it gives customers what they like in different colors, and so they have choice. And number two, it creates, some additional demand for your product during a time where it otherwise would not have. So I think it's good business, and, Product Red has a lot of supporters out there, as I think it should. And I just wish it was Product Blue, because I really like blue stuff. But I got to support, you got to give it up Product Red. It's awesome. So maybe there's a red iPhone 10.
Well, absolutely. So I so support the Product Red movement, but I'll be honest with you, when I see Product Red, my first thought is, the new phone's about to be out. And it just seems as though when Product Red comes out, you end up buying a phone that's already yesterday, because then within 4 or 5 months, the next product's going to be announced. So red is always a signal to me, whether I like the color, don't like the color, I think, oh gosh, well, the next one's about to come out. So there's no way I would buy kind of a mid-cycle phone. I just feel like you're buying the past rather than looking to the future.
Sure.
And don't you think it's interesting they haven't come out with a red iPad?
iPad seems to be a lot more conservative. With,
Yeah, I guess so.
with
Maybe so.
colors
Yeah.
and things. I guess based on the nature of the device, but yeah, I don't know. I think they could probably do it as a one-off just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
And who knows? It could turn out to be the most popular iPad ever. You never know what consumers are going to do.
That's right. Well, so let me ask you this: the speculation's always about. So if you've got a new phone, if there's a new product, what's it going to be? So is it iPhone 9? Is it iPhone 11? What's the consensus about that?
Well, I think the consensus right now is we won't see another flagship iPhone until, the normal September, October. I don't have any inside information on this. Nobody does.
Okay.
So I think if anything happens in March, it could be a refresh on an iPhone SE or a lower cost model, so not a flagship. Or it could be a color change or a color addition to the lineup, which they've done, in the past. I think that probably makes sense. I wouldn't expect a very big announcement here.
Okay. All right. Well, so what about the iPad Pro? Is there?
Let's be honest. All we care about is iPad Pros, right? You and I.
All we really care about iPad.
We
Pros.
could do an all iPad all the time show if we wanted to.
Well, we really could. This could really turn into an iPad podcast, but we restrain. We restrain from that, except for the fact that, as rumors go, what do you think is next for the iPad? And do you think a March event is something that they would focus on an iPad?
That's a good question. I really don't know about this one. So not that long ago, it was only about 9 months ago that the current iPad Pros were introduced. So we got the 10.5-inch iPad Pro and then the 12.9-inch as well, right? So you got the refresh on the 12.9, and then the 9.7-inch iPad Pro was replaced with the 10.5-inch or 10.5-inch iPad Pro. So that was in June. So going to newer models of those now doesn't quite feel right, not even being a year, because it's normally 12 to 18 months or so that you see iPad updates. And I don't know that feels right. However, if you consider, Apple's been doing a lot lately, this little 1-2 thing where they announce a new device or a new something or other, and then it's months before it's released. Mm-hmm. So if it's a radical change to an iPad, for example, and they need to give, let's say, developers a couple of months to catch up, right, or to get stuff ready for a launch in a few months, then something like that could make sense. Because if you're going to significantly change, either the footprint, screen sizes, all that kind of stuff, then you have to give the developer community time to adapt to that. And so it could make sense if they announce something now that is ready to go in 3 or 4 months, then you're at the year timeline again, and then it's ready to go. So what could those be? And I think the big question is, do the changes that we saw this year with the iPhone 10, the edge-to-edge, I'm going to put an asterisk there because of the notch. We'll just call it edge-to-edge. The edge-to-edge display, an OLED display, the TrueDepth cameras, the Face ID, right? No home button. The iPhone 10 was a really big change hardware-wise. Mm-hmm. So the question is, do those changes get brought over to the iPad line? And some of that, I think, is a no-brainer, and some of it is a big question mark. So I think the things that would be a no-brainer is probably getting rid of the home button, right? Because we've established that thing is headed out anyway. So that's probably gone. You could certainly do the front-facing TrueDepth cameras, and those are that's the camera that does the Face ID and the Animoji and that sort of thing, right? So they're really good front-facing cameras, as well as the rear cameras that always get nice upgrades. And Apple's been putting really good cameras on their iPads the last few years. They finally just gave up and said, "Fine, people are going to use their iPads as cameras," right?
Yeah.
I'm going to Disney next week, and there will be people there taking pictures with iPads. Why? I don't know. but they do. So they started putting really good cameras on iPads, and that's good. It needs to be on there. So really good cameras on the front and back, including the True Depth sensor and camera on the front, which does Face ID and the Animoji. No home button, certainly. Edge to edge ish. I don't think the iPad's the kind of product that can be completely edge to edge because you have to have somewhere to grab it.
Yeah.
You can't just grab it by the edges like you can a phone without touching the screen. You need a little bit of room, at least on two sides like you have now, whether there's a home button or not. You need a little bit there. So I don't know if it goes completely edge to edge, but you could certainly push the boundaries there a little bit more than you do now if you get rid of the home button. The wild card is OLED. And the reason for that is OLED is expensive and the constraints on just supply are there, right? So would it be awesome? Yes. Yes, it would. Because an OLED screen is fantastic. It's beautiful. And if you look at what Apple did with the iPhone 10 and their implementation of OLED, you apply that to an iPad, I would probably just have to buy one day one. I feel somewhat guilty about that, but I would get over it pretty damn quick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because I need one of those in my life.
But don't you think, I mean, here's the deal. If they announce a new iPad, then they're forced to then begin to sell the current iPad models at a discounted rate, because then you can create a discount market for what you already have in the supply line. But if you announce, and you do that, you'd announce a new one, then you create a discount market, you'd flush the market with, you'd sell out your 10.5s, you'd sell out your 9.7s, all of those things. But if they announce it too soon, I think they kill their current market. I think it's one of those things. I don't know that they would announce a new model and have very much lag time between the announcement of the model and the availability of the model, because then it almost freezes sales on the current iPad unless they have intention to discount that by $100 or $150 or whatever it is they do. They created a thing where you can get a deal on yesterday's model. But I don't know that they would have much lag time between the announcement of a new model and the availability of that model. That's my feeling about it.
Well, okay, so if they did an OLED iPad, there's no way they're going to sell that for the same price as what they're selling the current iPads, right? So the iPhone 10 is a good example of it. So what I mean is, the iPhone 10 starts at, $1,000.
Yeah.
Right? And so you don't have to discount the previous model if you jack up the price of the new one. The current model seems like a deal, price-wise, compared to one that they jack up the price on.
But you're talking about a $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 price point on an iPad.
Well, there's an $1,100 iPhone.
Oh, no. I know. I wonder how... I just wonder what the stomach of the market really is. $1,000 seems like a price point, and I think you get over that for a tablet, and I just don't know how many people are doing that. Could be, and I mean, I don't know. It's closer and closer to being a desktop replacement. I totally agree with that. That just seems outrageous to me. Of course, I thought it. At the time, a $400 phone was outrageous when the iPhone came out.
Yeah, so. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're speculating here. I have no, nobody knows any of this stuff for sure. That's the best part about a rumor show, is we're not wrong.
No, we're not wrong.
There is no information that disproves anything that we are saying. Well, at least there's no information as of the time that we record this.
Yeah, that's
so. What we need to do is, when and if there is, or are announcements or an event or something like that, we need to go back and listen to our show and then do a follow-up show to this show and basically say, yeah, we were pretty much wrong about everything.
But I'll say the Fill in the Blank podcast has a track record of being spot on. I'm just saying that for the record.
That's true.
So
that is true.
All right. So there's the iPad, the refresh. So what else is in the line that that's out there? That could be the next refresh. Certainly, there's no new products. Certainly, they wouldn't. A March event's not where we'd get a brand new product. Do you think?
Well, we have before. We got the Apple Watch at a March event. We got the MacBook at a March event. The question would be, what would that brand new product be? I don't really think so. There really hasn't been any rumor of a new, a brand new device. So I don't think that that's the case. I think you might see revisions on current devices, like we've mentioned, with maybe an SE update, maybe a different color added to iPhones, revisions of iPads Pro or
What about the
otherwise.
iPad Mini? We haven't talked about the iPad Mini.
Nobody talks about the iPad Mini.
Think there's ever a Mini Pro in the future?
I don't think so. I think the Mini is probably done. There's rumor that the next round of iPhones will have an even larger iPhone. So something the size of, say, a 7 or 8 Plus, but edge-to-edge screen, which I would love. And
And you could use your Apple Pencil on it?
to be determined on that. I don't know. I'm not sure. It'd be great if you could. I think it would be awesome. I don't know what Apple's intention is with bringing that type of user input and interaction to the phone yet. I think it would be great, but I think the Mini's probably done at this point because you've got the lower end. I shouldn't even say that. The 5th generation iPad, which is the non-Pro, which is a great iPad, and it's for the customer that doesn't necessarily need the features and the price tag that goes along with an iPad Pro. Right, so my mom is a great customer for the current iPad, not the Pro, just the iPad, right? And that is perfect for email, some web browsing, Facebook, that kind of stuff. It is awesome for that. And so I guess the price point of that is so good, and you've got a 9.7-inch device there, and you've got the phones that are getting larger. So it feels like the Mini is kind of the odd man out in both size and price. You know what I mean? So I just don't know where it would go, but I could be wrong.
It's a great reader, but if you went to an edge-to-edge, bigger iPhone, no home button, that really becomes an ideal reader. I mean, now you're into almost the screen size of like a Kindle, Paperwhite or something like that.
Can I just tell you, I use the 12.9-inch iPad, right? That's my daily driver, and I use it all day, every day. I have a 9.7-inch iPad Pro. That was my original. We talked about that a while back. And every now and then I'll get that out, when I'm just kind of lounging or whatever. It feels like an iPad Mini to me after using the 12.9 all day. So I don't know. The iPad Mini, my wife has an iPad Mini. I don't think she really ever even uses it anymore. It's years and years, maybe 4 years old at this point. And it just seems, I'd just rather use my phone than that. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, so the article goes on to mention Apple Watch bands, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I couldn't care less about Apple Watch bands. I mean, I don't even know how that's news. I mean, if you need a new band, get a new band. I don't know. Maybe that's a thing for people, but the band sparks zero interest in me.
How many watch bands do you own?
One. Just the one that came with it. I mean, do you accessorize with watch bands?
Well, I have multiple watch bands, if that's what you mean.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Huh.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's not like it's not like I've got a million of them, but I probably have 3 or 4. So, well, okay. Let me just say this: I had the very first Apple Watch, right? The original Apple Watch.
Yeah.
And
I still do, by the way.
I have the band that came with it.
Yeah.
And then I bought another band not too long after I bought that watch. I like the color better or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I had one there. Okay. And then I got a band as a gift. Actually, I had 2 bands as a gift. And then I bought my Series 3 watch that has a new, that has this sport loop thing on it, which I love, by the way. And since then, I think I maybe bought one more. So it's kind of a combination of, and okay, to be fair, Some of them I kind of wear out a little bit, like the fabric ones or the nylon ones or whatever. They kind of get worn out after a while. So
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
so some of it's just a little bit of wear and tear. Some of it is, I mean, I color coordinate. I
Yeah,
mean, you kind of
well,
asked the
all right.
question like you were judging me a little bit, but
I wasn't. I didn't even really ask a question. All I said was, I'm just not really interested in watch bands. So
okay.
I just didn't realize you were the kind of guy that was interested in watch bands. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, let me say this.
For the
Okay, so
fill in the blank record.
it says it goes on to ask about colors. Like a product red watch band,
Yeah.
which I do have a red one. My sister got it for me, and I really like that. I'm not a big red person, but I do like that red watch band. And then it says metallic blue. Dude, I'm all in on a metallic blue. I don't know if like I'm flunking some personality test of some kind here, but I don't care. A metallic blue, I'd probably be all over that. This isn't news. Every few months they release new watch bands. This is a seasonal accessory. It's a fashion accessory.
And it's an accessory that Apple doesn't have the market on. All kinds of people are making iPhone watch bands now.
They do, but they sell theirs for like $40 and $50, and they make them a bajillion at a time for 3 cents. And so, I mean, this is a great accessory business for them. And
Except for my multi-tool watch band. I would buy the multi-tool watch band. If you could recall from the last several episodes back, my blank check was a multi-tool watch band. I don't have one yet, but I'd go to that watch band.
okay, I think it's time to move on from there. Okay, watch bands, not a story. Are they going to have new ones? Probably. That's not news.
All right, what about Face ID in Macs? What do you think about that? Facial recognition.
The Mac lineup has gotten so much negative press over the last year or two because of, the Touch Bar got kind of a lukewarm reception. The keyboard in the new Mac Pros or MacBook Pros, people are just rebelling against. So it's got issues. So the Face ID, it makes sense totally that they would put that in there. I think it'd be a welcome addition. But they got to fix some of the basics first. I don't know what the future of the Touch Bar is. I go back and forth on it. I mean, it's nice, but I don't know that it's how often you would use it. And I'll tell you, I made my decision. I bought a new computer 6 or 7 months ago. We've talked about this. And after going back and forth and going through every make and model of every MacBook Pro, which my former computer was a MacBook Pro, I just bought a MacBook Air. And
okay, yeah.
And I did it because it had the keyboard that I wanted. It had everything that I wanted on it, but it didn't have a Retina display. And you think, oh my goodness, how could you live without a Retina display? And I'll be honest with you, 99% of the time, that machine is docked and closed, and I've got a giant 27-inch monitor, and it more than makes up for that. And so that doesn't really bother me. So when I do use it, though, the keyboard is fantastic on it. I use the Apple Magic Keyboard, the wireless keyboard at, kind of like a desktop setup here in my office at home. So, I don't really know what they're doing with the Mac lineup right now, but I hope they take all the feedback to heart, like they did with the Mac Pro. Right, they're going to completely redo the Mac Pro. Maybe we get an update on that pretty soon. The iMac Pro, I think, was a very big deal. I would love to have an iMac Pro, by the way. Very expensive, but it is such a sweet machine. So the Face ID in there makes total sense. I think you walk up to it, it sees your face, it unlocks. That would be great. My current computer, my MacBook Air, when I sit down at the desk, it unlocks from my Apple Watch, which is fantastic. So I really like that feature. Adding the functionality of that camera would be really nice, but they got to fix the basics first.
Okay.
But honestly, I think it makes more sense to have Face ID on a Mac than it does an iPad.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. I totally agree. Well, let's talk about accessories for a minute. So you got AirPower, still waiting on that. You've got, I still am waiting for a refresh on the Apple Pencil. I'd love to see that smaller a little bit. And then the AirPods. Do you think it's time for an AirPod refresh? And if so, how would you refresh them?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know what they could do. The AirPods are pretty awesome as is, in my opinion. I don't know that they are technically waterproof or resistant now, so maybe doing that would be helpful, especially for people that use them for, while they're exercising. That could be
Or in
helpful.
the shower.
Or in the shower, sure.
Shower pods.
Shower. All right, moving on. They could probably improve the battery life, although the battery life's pretty good on them already, but that seems like a normal kind of upgrade.
Yeah.
I don't really know what
Colors?
else they can do. They could do colors. I don't really have too many complaints about AirPods. I mean, I think they're pretty awesome as is. I don't know. I mean, there's talk of the wireless charging case, so you could just upgrade the case and then, throw your AirPods down on a wireless charger, which is where the AirPower. I can't stand that name. The AirPower. And the AirPower is this charging pad. It looks to be about, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches wide, maybe.
Right.
And you can put your phone, your AirPods, if they're in the wireless charging case, and your watch, say. Let's say those 3 things across. That's what the picture shows anyway. So you could put those 3 things, just lay those 3 things down on there, on your nightstand or in the kitchen or wherever you've got your AirPower charging pad, and it just wirelessly charges all those. So, that's pretty cool. The name is terrible, for one. That's not really a reason to buy it or not to buy it, but just saying, I don't like the name. I don't know how much this thing would be, but it's Apple, so, it's going to be a premium. And I don't know, they announced this thing forever ago. They announced this in September of last year. And
It doesn't seem that hard. Everybody's got these.
well, okay, so at work, my office at work, my work phone, as I mentioned earlier, is an iPhone 8 Plus. It supports wireless charging. I've got a great little Samsung, it sits up at an angle, little wireless charging pad, and I just put my iPhone on it, starts charging, great. Samsung's been making that for like a year, maybe 2 years. They've been making wireless charging pads for a couple of years now, but, and I think it works great. I have no complaints. Works.
Don't know why they
So,
don't have that out. That seems ridiculous
I don't
to
know.
me.
So they, if anything, they could maybe release that. I don't know that they need to have an event for this AirPower pad since they've already announced it, but they could just get out the door. That would be helpful.
Well, so okay, software. Is there any reason to believe you'd have a March, April, May software update, whether it's your desktop, your OS, or your iOS?
Nope. Nothing major. I think we are in, especially with iOS, we are probably in refine mode, and let's smooth out, some of the issues. iOS 11 is still pretty buggy.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
I mean, there's some random weird things on my iPhone, more so on my iPhone than my iPad.
The apps and software still hasn't caught up.
Yep.
Not fully, I don't think.
Yeah, so I don't know that you'd see anything major. I think it's probably all going to be just iterative updates and some bug changes and that sort of thing. At least that's what I think it should be.
All right. Well, so that's the Mac rumors. So the rumor of a March Apple event is out there, and so Keith, yes or no? There's going to be a March event. What do you think?
Probably.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's going to be one, so we can. We'll be able to see when we come back. Well, hey, listen, let's wrap it up. We'll just end the rumors there. We actually are not going to have a show next week. We're going to take off, do a little travel, but we'll be back the next week. We'll follow up, see if there's any news about an Apple event, and then we've also got a whole list of things we want to follow up on that have hit the news that are of great interest to us and I think the fill-in-the-blank listeners. And so with that, we're going to conclude this week's discussion of how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. Thank you for listening to the show. And remember, the fill-in-the-blank $1 challenge. Your support goes a long way. No show next week. We'll see you in 2 weeks right back here at Fill in the Blank.